Hey, we want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening for a special episode of You and the Law podcast show. Normally, we uh, air on Thursday afternoons at 6 p.m., and today we're airing on Friday at 6 p.m. So we want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in and join us. We've got a topic that hopefully everybody will tune in and be a part of the conversation with me and my co-host, who goes by the name of Chief Swag. How you doing, brother? Lo- nope, can't hear you.
First of all, 6 o'clock is not in the afternoon, it's in the evening. So I know that probably in New Mexico you might refer to it as evening, but that's afternoon, but that's evening. So I just want to man, you know I always got mess with you, man. What's going on, B?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot, brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. You got the beard thickening out, man. And, you
Man,
know,
yeah, man. You starting to get, you done really got into this retirement life, man. You ain't
well,
it's just been 2 weeks.
it hasn't been 2 weeks, bro. It's been a month.
Well, yeah. I guess
Actually,
it has been a month. Yeah,
man,
yeah.
you man, what's wrong with you, man?
Well, you know what, man. I keep telling you, man. Somebody asked me in the chat last week, uh, why did I call you Grady? And you starting to get this beard with the gray and the black. So you know, I don't know, man. Is that what retirement life brings you? Is this the retirement life look?
Whatever, man. Go on, dude. Let's go and get with the topic, man. Okay, let me ask you this: does this look better?
Yeah, man. You know what? You got the swag. So
You
so
wasn't you wasn't trying to diss my fraternity, were you?
no,
Oh, okay.
never. I would
Oh,
never
okay.
dish your frat. You're a frat brother, man. You know, I want to be
Yeah.
like you. I want to be a frat brother.
You don't. Nah, dude. You don't want to. Nah, you ain't
So
got it in you, man.
so what you telling me? I'm not accepted into the brotherhood.
No, I didn't say that at all. What I said was you. You can't, man. No.
Well, see, last week you told me that I was one of your best friends.
You are.
I'm, so it
You
seemed
are.
like to me, man, that you should just, you know,
No, no.
now,
You know what? Best friends are honest with best friends, man. You don't have, nah, man. You
come on.
can't do that. You can't do that. Anyway, let's move forward, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what, Keith? This is a lot of stuff is going on this weekend. We've got Juneteenth weekend. We got Father's Day. So there's a lot going on, and I felt that this topic would be appropriate for going into Juneteenth weekend. And tonight we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people probably don't know about, and it is the 1968 Kerner Commission report. Something that you've talked a lot about, and we've talked about it on the show. So tonight we're going to be, looking at that a lot more and seeing what took place in 1968 and how things are, some 54 years later.
Yeah. So, I have mentioned that several times before because, uh, yeah, I think it shouldn't have taken the 21st century policing report to open the nation's eyes regarding the broken relationship between law enforcement and the communities of color. In 1967, 68, then President Johnson um, established that commission, the Kerner Commission, because of such of the same things that were going on in 2012, 13, 14, 15 were going on in 1960, in the 60s. We realized that's a strong civil rights era. And the things were going on. There was attack our African American communities or communities of color by law enforcement, which at that time was predominantly white profession. And Johnson wanted to know what's going on. Why is there so much violence in communities of color, especially African American communities, at the hands of law enforcement?
Mm-hmm.
And what it found, this report was very blatant. The report got it right, but the signs have been missed for so long. But the report was very, very accurate. 55 years ago, basically said that when you continue to try to keep a person down and you don't provide people with the same opportunities, and there's that perception that of sovereignty by some, and you continue to keep people in low socioeconomic areas, lack of education, lack of jobs, lack of social services, and then you come in and you want to be heavy-handed, you are going to have a breaking of the races.
Yeah,
and you're going to have a black world and a white world.
Yeah.
And when you look at, that's where we are right now. Now, are we completely there, Virgil? I don't know, because I will tell you that I was just really proud to see all the different cultures and ethnicities coming to stand up for equality and the elimination of police brutality. So I know that you have people of all races that feel the same that you and I do, and many of our listeners, that racism, xenophobia, none of those type of isms have any place in this nation. However, there are people that just refuse to let those go. I will tell you, and the unique thing is, many of these individuals, Virgil, and to the listeners, wear the blue uniform. Let me back up. I don't want to say many. There are some of these individuals that wear the blue uniform that make it no secret how they feel regarding people of color and what they feel about organizations like Black Lives Matter and how they feel about the LGBTQ communities and the Middle Eastern community, all the different. So there's no doubt. I mean, these conversations go on at police departments throughout the nation each and every day, just like they're natural conversations, and it's like it's no big deal. So the Kerner Commission got it right. We've got it wrong in law enforcement. We've done a few things to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so glad in 2015 when President Obama established that commission, and the commission found out the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That the Kerner Commission found out 60-some years ago. And this is what I found unique about it. You had a white man from Texas, Lyndon Johnson, a white man from Texas, who many would have thought would be the last person to fight for civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the one that said, we have a problem in our nation between law enforcement and, well, we have a racial issue in our nation, but we definitely have problems with law enforcement and the way they conduct business in predominantly African American communities, such as Oakland, California, Detroit, Michigan, LA, Dallas, Birmingham, Alabama, Atlanta, Selma, how police officers were treating African Americans.
Yeah. Do you think Martin Luther King played a major role?
Absolutely.
With that process?
Absolutely. I mean, you really think about it, man. Him and those that were working with him, the meetings that they had. I will tell you this, man. I do know a lot of people say that Kennedy got that started. I totally disagree with that. I think that Kennedy did what he did just to kind of appease people. And I have nothing against President Kennedy, but to me, if it hadn't been for President Johnson stepping up and making those and saying that we need a civil rights Act and saying that Kerner Commission and other things, I don't know where we would be today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, Keith, I want to acknowledge some people who have joined us on the podcast. We've got, of course, our good friend Candy from Arkansas is on. We've got Mrs. White from Oklahoma City is joined us, and so wanted to acknowledge a few of our those who continue to follow our podcast every week. We want to just thank you guys for tuning in, and obviously Chief Swag. Candy said Silver Fox. You got it going on.
I know I do. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, Candy. I appreciate it. I'm just kidding. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy.
Hey. So I want to play a video real quick, guys. And so this will kind of give those who don't know too much about the Kerner Commission report. And oh man, we've got Miss Johnson from Tulsa has joined us with Tulsa Public Schools. Thank you for tuning in, Tracy. Yeah. So Keith, let me pull up this video. Show this video real quick. So this gives everybody a little bit of background about the Kerner Commission report from 1968.
We were not really shocked or surprised to find these terrible conditions in which black people lived in this country. But we put actual faces on the problems by going out through the country and by the work that the commission did. And we also saw what hostility there was in the country. We met right away after the president appointed us, and we set up a series of 20 days of formal hearings where we heard witnesses all the way from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. And then we broke up into teams and visited riot cities ourselves. And we said that that the terrible conditions gave rise to these protests and riots, that any spark could set off the violence. The underlying causes were racism and poverty. The most famous words of the commission were these: our country is moving toward two nations, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And we recommended new national programs, particularly around jobs and education. It was controversial. My own father, a small farmer in southwestern Oklahoma, he said, what you're saying is that a person like me ought to pay more taxes to help poor black people who are rioting in Detroit. That's the way a lot of people heard it. President Johnson was convinced that there was some organization, some conspiracy, some planning behind these riots, which had occurred in cities all over the country, large and small. Later on, the president began to change his mind. We made progress, serious progress, on virtually every aspect of race and poverty in the country for about 10 years after the Kerner report. For example, we were very steadily reducing poverty in the country. The findings, of course, are still quite good, and the recommendations as well. You're not going to have the kind of stable society of self-esteem unless we have a good deal more equality in this country. America is founded really on the idea that all of us are created equal and we ought to have equal opportunities for the good life. That was certainly not true then. It's not true now.
Hey, Keith, that was a powerful video clip, man.
Yeah, Virgil, it was, and it is. Every time I look at that video, I get chills up my spine because it's amazing. And that commission, if people don't know, the majority of it were white males, 2 African American men, and I believe a faith-based partner, if I make no mistake. But for them to take, and you know what, man, they put their political careers on the line. Not only they put their political lives, they put their actual lives and the lives of their families on the line by that final report. Because for so many years, there'd been so much denial that there was these things going on, and it goes back to what I've always said. Hey, KB, what's going on, man? How you doing, man?
Yeah, good to see you,
Uh,
Kenneth.
One of the things that I say that I've said is that if the America did not know that there was such a divide between black and white, and especially between the law enforcement at that time, which was predominantly white male, pretty much only white male dominated profession, was an all white male dominated profession, and people of color, then your head was in the sand because Selma, Detroit riots, Watts riots in Birmingham, riots in Dallas, riots all over the South, and also in the East. I'm sorry, the West. But to say that we didn't know, and that this commission opened the eyes of a lot of people. So did that commission open the eyes of a lot of people because it was predominantly white males who were saying it? Because blacks have been saying it for years. So all of a sudden, it makes sense now. But I go to say that these men took a beating in later years, politically and personally, based on the fact of them telling the truth of what they've actually studied. And what I want to commend them on is that they actually, instead of calling people or interviewing people over the phone, they actually went out to these cities to see for themselves and to actually talk to people in person to get the real story of why these things were existing. So, this 54 years later, it's still a topic of discussion.
It is.
Still, and then let's don't even add in January 6th, where you had police officers that took part in the riots that turned on police officers that were white, black, female. And so that just shows you, man, that this profession still has a long way to go.
It definitely does, Keith. And Keith, I want to get to a comment that KB just posted. He said, this is a great topic today. He just stated he just read the Kerner Commission report a couple of weeks ago in an MPA program, written public, a public policy course. He stated that crazy that the report is still relevant and true today. And you got to ask yourself why some 54 years later, with the Kerner Commission report, Keith, and then 21st century community policing, the 21st century community policing addressed more related to policing practices. The Kerner Commission report addressed poverty and policing, and I think a lot of people
heavy-handed policing.
Heavy-handed policing, yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that the poverty level that was in 1968, Keith, and in some parts of the country, when you get up to urban cities like Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, the poverty level is really no different in 2022 than it was in 1968. The only thing looks different is that things are now color. Back then they were black and they were black and white.
Well, I think that there's a perception that because it's 2022, it's a new century, new time, that things have gotten better. Have things gotten better? Yeah, well, we've had a black president. We have black mayors. We have black, elected politicians. We have black business owners. But we still have a high level of poverty in some of the cities that we're talking about. We still have a lack of jobs in certain cities. We still have a lack of education in certain cities. We still have high crime in certain cities. And so, you ask, are things better? They are, but at the same time, the mindset. I mean, I can make my house look just as beautiful on the outside. I can have the most beautiful landscape. I can have beautiful cars sitting out front. I can have a pool in the backyard, beautiful lawn furniture. But inside, the walls have holes in them. The paint's peeling. The floors are dirty. And so, we can cover it as much as possible to make it seem like things look better than they are. But the fact of the matter is, to me, it's like, having open heart surgery. You can be you can actually be the picture of health. And until, you have a medical reaction or something and they end up having to go to you internally. And that's when they find out what's wrong. There's something deeper, either you have artery blockage or something like that. So, you can look good on the outside. And so I think that's what a lot of people see. But until you've actually worked internally in these police departments, especially police departments in the South, as an African-American male, you actually see that the Kerner report was on point, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, and Keith, one of the things we've talked about this before, but today we're talking about it a little bit more in depth. And I think one of the things that I got to reflect back on, I don't know if you feel the same way, but this was in 1968. I think, I was born in 63. You were probably born about the same time.
Watch it.
So do you ever look back as a kid and say, wow, these things were going on when we were probably 4 or 5 years old?
Man, we lived it, man. I think we didn't get the maybe you and I may have not got the direct impact that some of our peers and people who grow up, because I grew up in Dallas and my granddad was a big civil rights guy. My mom was a big civil rights. And so they were very honest with me, so I saw a lot of it. But at the same time, they took a lot of the deflected a lot of things that I probably didn't see that other people saw. But I do remember. I still remember seeing the outprint of the black and white only water fountains where my grandfather worked. I do remember seeing that. I do remember my dad being stopped along Interstate 20 by some state troopers one night for no reason whatsoever. Mm-hmm. My dad reached in to get his hat, and all the troopers, there were 4 troopers riding in one car, and all the troopers, we was definitely profiled, and all the troopers got out with my dad, went to get, he told them, I'm gonna go get my hat, and all of them got out with their guns drawn on him. I remember that.
Wow.
I remember those type of things. I remember being called the N-word as a young man. I do remember. Now, like I said, I don't probably didn't have the impact that some people had, based on the fact of who my family was and the things that my grandfather and my mother and my uncle did to stand up to racism and stand up for the community that we lived in. But I'm telling you, there's some people that could tell some horror stories about they've experienced. And I will tell you, man, when you really just look at, especially when you look at the Kerner Commission, there were people that joined police departments, and I strongly believe there are still people who join police departments to take their anger out on
minorities.
Well, yeah, people.
Yeah.
Whether it's people of color, whether it's people of different, cultures, different from different countries or whatever, socioeconomic. I still believe there are people that wear the badge, that put on a blue uniform, wear the badge, that do it because they have so much authority that they believe that they can do whatever they want to.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have lived that. We've seen it. I can put names with faces and names with the actions. Even in 2022, the people have a problem with police officers have a problem with work in certain areas and work in certain people.
Well,
I mean, listen, man. 3 or 4 months ago, I had an officer put an email out. A former officer when I was working put an email out describing 2 young African American men and put at the end of their email, "Happy hunting."
Wow.
And you didn't understand why they were being disciplined for that.
Well, golly. So, I mean, just like the Kerner Commission report stated in 1968, you had police officers who felt that the way Black people lived in these urban cities, this was of their own fault.
Man, listen, they don't still just think, they didn't just think that in 1968.
Well, they still
think
think
it in 2022.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say.
Why should we care about these people? Because they don't care about themselves.
Yeah.
Look where they live. Well, listen, when's the last time a house committed a crime?
Exactly.
My question is, where does somebody live have to do with somebody's heart?
Yeah.
Have you gotten to know that? Have you gotten to know that individual?
Yeah. Well,
so,
and there's I mean, we can talk about this tonight and any other podcast where there have been so many people of all color that have came out of living in that type of environment who have went on to be lawyers, judges, politicians, entertainers. So it goes back to the same thing that took place during the Civil Rights era, the same thing that was found in the Kerner Commission report in 1968, that you've got 2 separate societies. You've got a white world and a Black world. And you've got people still to this day who still want it that way. I mean, there is a older generation, and then you even got a younger generation who still feel that way.
Virgil, I'm gonna back up on that. I'm gonna correct you about that when you say the older, because I'm telling you right now.
Well, I said older and younger.
Well, yeah, but I think 20, 30 years ago you could say older. But when you look at the age of the Proud Boys, and other,
they're younger than we are.
Young.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if the average age ain't 30.
Yeah.
So that mindset, now, is there a mindset there from these groups that are talking to some of these older individuals that started those processes or have those deep feelings where they're saying, okay, that's okay, you all can rest now, we'll take it from here? Yeah, I think there are.
Yeah.
I think that it's the scariest thing in the world is to have somebody who's an extremist, whether it's extreme right or extreme left. I said extremist. I'm not talking about a person who is who's moderate, who at least will have a conversation with you, but a person who will go to the level of violence because you don't agree with them. That's the most scariest thing in the world, to have that person wear a badge and a gun, or to have that person in some form of high level decision-making position, such as president, vice president, governor, senator, representative, council. Those
Judges,
you can't
judges.
give people that have that mindset any kind of authority.
Yeah.
You just can't. Now the thing about it is, everybody's not blatant with their racism.
Well, you got people who are passive aggressive. They
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, for Johnson to see this, for him at least, because you had J. Edgar Hoover never looked at it. Who was the highest ranking law enforcement official in the nation? J. Edgar Hoover never looked at it. Matter of fact, J. Edgar Hoover contributed to the problems that were going on throughout the nation when it came to racism. He contributed to it. Okay? You never had him say anything. You ever had other organizations, leaders of other law enforcement organizations step up and say, we have a problem. And then what really gets me is in Virgil, help me out here, 2014, 15, when there was a conference, the ICP conference, and I want to say it may have been Chicago, I can't remember, but the outgoing president of the ICP stood up before the governing body of all the chiefs from throughout the world and apologized to the communities of color of how law enforcement had treated people of color for years. It basically said, we got it wrong. But what he did say is, we're working to make things better and correct it. Do you know?
People got up and walked out of their room.
Do you know people got up and walked? People who wear badges like you and I, people who have taken the oath to protect all, got up and walked out.
Yeah.
And talked about protesting ICP. These are law enforcement leaders.
Yeah.
That talked about removing their membership from ICP.
Yeah.
Because this man just called them racist. Where did race come into that?
It didn't come into the conversation at all. He just acknowledged the deep-rooted culture in the history of racism within law enforcement and how law enforcement has treated Black people for decades.
Well, people of color. I mean, you just think about it. And not just people of color. You think about there were whites and there were people of who were Jewish, people who were German, people who were Asian that were treated the exact same way. You had whites. We talk about the young lady from Detroit that had driven to Birmingham to help with the march, the rights march that was killed.
Yeah.
And so we got to realize that the law enforcement has been very how do I say it? I don't want to say the word brutal, but they've been very, very oppressive. Our profession has been oppressive to many for years, for hundreds of years. Yeah. And the thing about it is, when I go back to this Kerner Commission, and talking to and just reading on some of the people who were involved in that study, people turned their backs on them. People made insensitive comments about them and racial loyalty and things like that, death threats.
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
you heard.
Yeah, go ahead.
You heard the gentleman in the video piece that that we played, where he said, he's from Oklahoma. His dad was a farmer in Southwest Oklahoma, and he said, "So you want me to take my money and pay more taxes for poor Black people?"
Let me ask you this.
So that's the mindset that you have of people then and the mindset of people now.
But you know what, Virgil, when you look and I think, when you look at the Kerner Commission and you look at now, man, there are a lot of homeless African-American people out here. So then you got
more than it was in 1968.
Say it again.
I believe it's more homeless people in 2022 than it was in 1968.
Well, I think it's hard. I think you're right. but we may never know because you don't have the resources now or the platforms to push that out there, so we don't know.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that when you're out here on these streets as a law enforcement officer, as a chief, as a civil rights activist, as someone who really listens and cares, things haven't changed for the best. I mean, they have. We've had a black president. Like I said, we've had black leadership, black business owners. For the first time in history, several black billionaires. The HBCUs are just busting at the seams when it comes to preparing our young black adults for the world. But there's just still something out there, Virgil, that still prevents us from totally being able to say we've made it. There's just something out there, and it goes back to the fact of, as a police officer, at the end of the day, two police officers, a black police officer and a white police officer. The difference is, at the end of the day, when that white officer takes his uniform off, he's normal, he fits in, there's no problem. Yeah. At the end of the day, even when I took my uniform off as a chief, I'm still a black man that's facing obstacles, hatred, and in this world. Yeah. I'm still more likely to be stopped and profiled. I'm still more likely to be on an elevator with someone who moves their purse to the other side. I'm still more likely to be followed in a store. I'm still more likely to be received or, someone being rude when I'm a patron at a restaurant or something like that. I'm still more likely to be questioned how I can afford certain things when stopped by a police officer. So, where it stops, where that white officer can, at the end of their shift, their life gets back to normal. My life as a black law enforcement officer and as a black male, my life never gets back to normal.
Yeah. Well, Keith, and I think one of another thing that I would say, having these podcast shows like this here, having topics where we're talking about the Kerner Commission report and talking about other things that are as important today as they were, 54 years ago. But, some people are, the only time they really get involved in these type of topics or in these type of conversations is when something happens. And so, I think, Keith, going back to seeing how things were in the 60s and 70s, you had people that were real engaged in trying to make sure that things change, whether in their communities or wherever else around the country. But we have a younger generation who don't know anything about the Kerner Commission, don't know really anything about 21st century community policing. And so it makes you wonder why people are some people, not all, but some people are removed from that. And there's so much other things going on. But then when these things happen, such as what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd, now all of a sudden, it took a man to lose his life for people around the United States and around the world to say there is something seriously wrong with policing in America.
Well, Virgil, let me say this. People have been saying that for years, and I say this so I think I want to make it clear to the listeners out here. I hear what you're saying, But people have been saying it for years.
Oh, yeah.
It goes back since the 1800s.
Yeah.
You know, after the Civil War. You know, when you look at the Klan, the highwaymen, and the slave patrols, when you look at the fact that is how modern day policing, that's some of the modeling that modern day policing took. And for so many years, you didn't have people who look like you and I. You know, Bass Reeves was an anomaly.
Yeah.
You know, and for so many years, you never know anything about Bass Reeves. So I think what happens, which is what I see, is that you do have a lot of people who are removed from it. You know, they don't know what's going on until something major happens that affects people who look like you and I. And that is sad. But I will tell you, there's a lot of voices out here, a lot of voices that for years have been saying these same things. Martin Luther King was saying it. John Lewis was saying it. Abernathy was saying it. Roy Wilkins was. All these people were saying this, man. All these people were saying this for years. So my question is, I just want you to, and the listeners, I want to put this in perspective. So it takes you've been seeing minorities slaughtered and beat down for years. Okay, wrongfully convicted, killed at the hands of law enforcement for years. Martin Luther King fought on that. Other civil rights activists, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, others fought on that, bringing that to the attention of the nation. Nothing. Then you have a white man who says, we got to do something. Okay. Then something was done. Then this study comes. Okay. There's no other studies, nothing else between 1968 until 2015. And it took the first African-American president to come back and say, hey, something's still not right. Now, people have been saying it, but something's still not right.
Exactly.
You know? And people have been saying it, but this is the deal. This is what you hear. Yeah, there's a problem, but in these areas, Chicago, Baltimore, Dallas, LA, Birmingham, those areas, you got to bust them in the head to get their attention. You got to bust them in the head to get their attention. Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed, but it's needed in that area. So now, what you just told your people that you swore in to protect the law, by any means necessary. That's what you're telling them. By any means necessary, let's get this city under control. You had a white police executive in St. Louis that was that was monitoring the riots after the Michael Brown killing, who was out there chanting with the police officers, we own the streets. We own the streets. Now you tell me how that looked. What would that look like if I got out with Black Lives Matter or any other protest and start talking bad about the police and talking about this? Look here, man. What you can't do stuff like that. But when they see you doing something like that as a leader, then there are those officers in the department that are going to follow stride. And so in 2015, they come back and they say the exact same thing that Johnson found. Obama found even more. But the thing that didn't happen with the Kerner Commission, it was very broad. It just said there's going to be a black and a white nation. These are the things we need to fix. Fast forward to 2015, Obama laid the roadmap, 6 pillars.
Yeah.
Very detailed. It's a step-by-step approach on how to improve those relationships. First time. So now you have no excuse as a law enforcement department, as a police chief, as a law enforcement officer, not to know what it takes to strengthen those relationships between law enforcement and the communities of color.
Yeah.
So it goes from this is the problem, and now we try to fix it ourselves, to now here's the cheat sheet. Here's the cheat sheet right here. Here is the cheat sheet. Here is that you need a 32 on the ACT to go to Harvard.
Yeah.
Here is the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
That will help you get that 32. So now 21st century policing is a roadmap on how to get there. And we still have people who refuse to abide by the rules.
So Keith, I'm gonna say, let me ask you this question, and to those who are listening to the podcast, tonight's topic is we're looking back at the 1968 Kerner Commission report that they got it right, but nobody listened. So I'm gonna ask,
1,000% right.
yeah. So I'm gonna ask you this question, and I'm gonna ask those who are watching to chime in and chat with us about it. So in 1968, this report came out, very detailed. It opened up a lot of people's eyes. So if nothing changed in 1968, we've had some improvements with a lot of different things. But I'm gonna go back to say, how could we fix anything if they didn't get it right in 1968? So it just makes you want, you've got a segment of people who have power who don't want to see things change. They want to see things stay the same way.
Well, Virgil,
So
listen,
how could something change here? How could something change? Let's say 10 years after the Kerner Commission report, that would have been what, 1978. Nothing changed in 1978. So how is it that we should think that anything is going to change when you had a perfect example of what was wrong with society in 1968?
Because 2 or 3 things. First of all, we were still in the civil rights era. The civil rights bill had just been signed in 65. Just because it was signed didn't mean everybody bought into it.
Oh, no.
There were still people fighting it.
Yeah.
There were still people fighting civil rights.
Yeah.
The Civil Rights Act. So
and still and hold on, Keith. They're still fighting civil rights because there are some states that are trying to repeal some of those civil rights
absolutely
that took place.
And so now you have a philosophy that, man, we ain't changing. You telling us we're wrong? We ain't wrong. We're in control, so we can't be wrong. Okay, so then you fast forward to you're asking about 2015. Well, think about this. In every decade, there's always been some issue that has been catastrophic between law enforcement and communities of color.
Yeah.
Think about it. When has there been a officer-involved shooting of a white individual that has led to so much
unrest,
rioting or protesting? So every year, we know every decade, there's been the death of an African American.
Well, Keith, not even every decade.
But there's been.
but I was going to say it's happened more often.
No. What I'm saying is, if you go back to the 60s, you go back to the 70s, go back to the 80s, go back to the 90s, go back to 2000s, 2010s.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, that's what. There's always been that. In the thing that has occurred, Virgil, from 2010 to 2022, we've had multiple.
Yeah.
We've had multiple. So it goes back to the fact of the matter is, if you don't think it's broken, why are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
If every time I say something about diversity or something about improving relations between the police departments and communities of color, and you don't look like me, and the first thing you do is you get offended and you say that I'm calling you a racist, instead of saying, well, let's put our hands together, let's hold hands and work on this to see how we can do that, so we can show the community that we want to work together. But you say things like, I don't go to those community events, or I'm not going to that. We don't know what to expect. Really? So it's okay for me as a chief of police to stand in front of a large group of people who are upset because the profession that I am in took the life of someone they love, it's okay for me to go out there, but it's not okay for you to go out there. So until we get rid of that mindset that it's their problem, not us. We can't change the way you live. We can't do this. Of course you can. As law enforcement, you know how we can change the way people live? If we're so concerned about our communities and we're so concerned about reducing crime in our communities, why do we not, as law enforcement officers, do more of these type of things? Get out of the car, talk to people, hand people business cards, your work email, have those ongoing conversations with people, recruit, talk to people about being in that profession, because what you're going to find in those communities, and I'm pretty sure if you go back and read this commission, they pretty much found that everybody in that area was not the problem.
Correct.
People who live in those areas where they were talking about are really amazing people.
Yeah.
And there are some individuals that keep it going. But if you get out and you want to learn more about people, yeah, as law enforcement, we can help the quality of life in our areas. We can help improve the quality of life. And I tell people this all the time. Camden, New Jersey is a prime example of how the police department made a difference in the community. Newark, certain areas of Newark, same thing. So it can be done. It's the fact that people in law enforcement professions don't want to do it. They're more concerned about titles. They're more concerned about how they look to their base. You know, how does the union feel about me? I'd rather worry about what the union thinks about me rather than the community. And you have people like that running police departments, Virgil. You have people up there getting checks every 2 weeks that are supposed to be fighting for everybody, but they actually fight for the union.
Yeah.
And I can say this because I just came out of a situation like that, where
Exactly.
I can tell you right now that there's a police department in the state of Arkansas who the officers, especially officers up in the higher levels, could care less about the communities of color, that being African American, that being Latino, that being Asian, that care about the LGBTQ. I can assure you that is their mindset. That, you know, we're not worried about making sure you feel safe.
Yeah.
We're making sure that you all aren't terrorizing our cities.
Yeah. Well, and it just kind of goes back to, Keith, you know, what tonight's topic is, as, you know, we come up on the last 5 minutes of the podcast where we're talking about the Kerner Commission report that came out in 1968, that, you know, these group of guys who then President Johnson put together, go back to what I said earlier. They got it right, but nobody listened. They got out and went to all these different urban cities. They saw for themselves what the relationship was between the Black community and law enforcement. And then they also looked at the poverty level. So, you know, you've got the same group of men who are in this profession, in law enforcement, that are really no different than they were in 1968. And when you say something like that, Keith, now it's like, how dare you say or accuse us of being that way? Now, but you got to look at the facts. Now, yeah, you've got a lot of white police chiefs from around the country who are doing their part, but that's just a handful. This isn't an industry where every police department in the United States is doing everything that they can to change their culture with their citizens in their communities. I don't care if you've only got 10 Black people who live in your city. What kind of relationship do you have with those Black people or with those Latino people or Asian people? but you have got a group of police officers who they feel like they come to work to take care of your problems.
Then that's
They
a
don't
whole
feel
different-
that they come to work to take care of everybody else's problem. But if you live on this side of the track, then we got to come over there and we got to deal with you in this way because you don't know how to act.
You see, I mean, that's fact.
That's a fact.
I recently had to address an issue where an officer told a rookie officer that you got to police this way over here and this way over there. Now, listen, man, really.
And see, Keith, that's why I continue to say, and you always try to be an optimist about everything in life. But this is just one profession, for whatever reason it is, that you got these guys who get into law enforcement for all the wrong reasons, and you got some who get into it for the right reason. But I got to say, more than the majority get into it for that attitude right there to teach somebody else. Hey, listen, man, I don't care what this guy over here told you. Listen to what I'm telling you.
I don't think it's fair to say the majority, because we always talk about 98% of the police departments are doing the right thing, as well as 98% of the officers. So we can't say the majority. What I will say is that small minority creates the majority of the problems for the majority of the police departments in the nation.
Yeah, you're right. And there again, I want to thank you for correcting me. I mean, I don't want to make it just seem like that this industry that we're in is bad. There are, like you said, there is a small minority, and that small minority continues to cause problems for an industry who continues to struggle with changing the way people look at policing in the United States. We got a comment up here. Let me get to this here comment while we got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, KB says that they write those essays and talk about getting into law enforcement to serve the community while in the police academies. But once they get the badge, they're serving the unions. You're absolutely correct.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
These guys lose their minds once they get out of this small percentage of guys lose their mind once they get out of the academy.
Yeah.
And for some reason, man, the FOP becomes the honor,
they become the spokesman.
sovereign.
They become the instead of the chief having the conversation or the spokesperson for the police department, the FOP does, Keith.
You will never have in certain police departments, you will never have the relationship between communities of color, or you will never have equality in the police departments as long as you have the FOP having a say-so regarding all aspects of the organization, having final say-so over who is hired, having final say-so over discipline, being able to say that I can say whatever I want to, although I am an officer for this respective department, I can say what I want to about the chief or whomever in public, but then I run back under the bubble of the union. But I can say whatever I want. So until you get that changed, and until you get rid of some of the state laws that regulate the hiring and firing of police officers and discipline of police officers, it's not going to change, man.
Yeah. Hey,
I want to say that I just want to commend the chief that just came into Knoxville, I believe, Knoxville or Chattanooga, that basically got the city council to overturn civil service, and he was able to go in and bring his own staff in and basically eliminate positions of those that were in certain positions that he knew that were going to cause problems. I wish more cities would do that.
Yeah.
And I think you would see a lot more changes, positive changes. But when an outside chief has to come in and he inherits a problem, then it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But if you can change that problem, anyway, I'm just saying. So hats off to that new chief for being able to do that.
Yeah. Well, hey, brother, it's we're at that time. It's been another great podcast, and we want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining in on this conversation as we talked about the 1968 Kerner Commission report, where they got it right, but nobody listened. Man, we mentioned that there's so much going on this weekend, Keith, with Juneteenth celebrations, Father's Day weekend. We want to, shout out to all the fathers. Definitely you, Chief Swag. Happy Father's Day to you, brother. And
hey, you're the father of Juneteenth, man. You're the father of Juneteenth. Man,
Yeah.
you're the father of Father's Day and the father of Juneteenth, man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, hey, man, I want to, next Thursday, we're going to have on a special guest, Bob Scales, who we've had on before, a great guy. He's going to be talking to us about how police departments collect data and share that data with their communities. And so we want to remind everybody to definitely tune in next Thursday at 6 p.m. We're going to be back on at our regular time on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So everybody get out and enjoy the Juneteenth celebrations, the concerts, and the barbecues and
barbecues.
The barbecues.
Hey, to the listeners, hey, we got to leave on that note. Barbecues. Okay, man.
Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody, y'all have a good weekend, and we will see you next Thursday on You and the Law podcast. Have a good evening.